So Bill James, my neighbor, he decided that nobody's ever interviewed me for what the real skinny is, and instead of me doing the interviewing and stuff like that. So he pinned me, and we're going to do, if you want to find out what's really going on, I might plead the fifth, I don't know. But stand by. Stick with us on FlyWire. Hey, I'm Scott Perdue, and today on FlyWire, Bill James, who just lives down the street, was across the street neighbor for years, until I built this new place. He's going to interview me today instead of me interviewing him. We had a talk a while back about his engine out situation, and that was pretty exciting. So today it's free form. I didn't get a list of questions. I didn't give him a list of questions, and I don't have a teleprompter. So over to you, Bill.
Okay. Well, thank you, Scott. I think this will be fun to kind of find out a little about you. There's a real fun game that we have played over the years with different friends, and the game is write down on a piece of paper something that no one would know about you. And then you mix up all the papers, and then you try to figure out who's who.
Oh, that is interesting.
At one point, got a piece of paper and it said, "My great-great-grandfather captured Santa Ana." So there's some potential. So basically, you do all kinds of interviews, and you're very active in several arenas. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is kind of confusing to those of us that try to watch and keep up. And you may remember, we came here 15 years ago, and after visiting the neighborhood, we watched several of your videos where you interviewed different people in the neighborhood. So that was our first exposure to this being one of the things that you do. And I know a little bit. I know of your military background. I know of your warbird activity. I know of I know that you participated in supporting Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and things like that with Young Eagles, that type of thing. I don't know exactly what's involved there. But to start out, we'll start out asking, I'd like to know about your military, but just to start out, what is something that most people wouldn't know about you?
Well, I might have to plead the fifth on this one, but so I think the first, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I necessarily have that interesting of a life, but one claim to fame national-wise instead of somebody in my family capturing Santa Ana, which is a pretty cool thing. That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
I can't remember how many greats it is, but he's one of my uncles on my dad's side. Is Francis Scott Key.
Oh, okay.
So
that definitely that sets you apart.
Yeah. Well, and the rumor on my mom's side of the family, and I'm not sure this is really totally true, but that's the family lore, is that Jack Cade, which appears in Shakespeare, he's one of the guys. I think it's in Shakespeare. He tried to blow up Parliament. And
he tried to blow up
Parliament. In England.
Now we're getting a little closer, I think, to get away from Francis Scott Key. So most people, I think, would be thinking about your military background. Can you start there?
Sure. I graduated high school in the middle of the recession in the early 70s. And I worked my whole life. I mean, I basically worked since elementary school, throwing up newspapers and stuff like that, and I was always really busy. Every summer, I'd work for a construction company, and then I was legal and I could drive, and, I was a parts runner and junk like that. So when I graduated from high school, I just couldn't feature having my dad pay for college because he was paying for my sisters, and it was a struggle. And I figured that, if he paid for my college, he'd hang it over my head for the rest of my life. So nowadays I don't think that is true because I don't hang it over my kids. But that's what I thought at the time. So, okay, I tried to get a job. There were no jobs. There were no jobs. I mean, even for whatever wage, I couldn't get a job, even at the construction company that I worked for several summers. And so I drank a bit too much beer in the interim, and then I decided that I needed to go in the service. And I went downtown because the recruiters were all downtown in those days, all on the same floor. And I went and knocked on the door of the Coast Guard because one of my friends from high school had joined the Coast Guard. I remember on Walt Disney, you know, they have these boats, these surf boats that can be rolled over in the surf, and it rolls up and off they go, and that looked like a lot of fun. So I talked to those guys for about a half hour, an hour, or something like that, and they told me, well, you're just the kind of guy we want. And I said, well, great, when can I start? And they said, well, it'd be probably 6 months, maybe more. And I go, oh, God, this is not working out for me. So I walked down the hall, and my dad was a Marine pilot in World War II. And he started out, he was an enlisted man, so he was a flying sergeant at the end of the war, but he was telegraph, he was radio before when he was straight enlisted. So I thought, well, I'll try the Marines and see what that deal was. And I walked in there, and there's 6 people waiting, and then there's a guy across they're all in couches, and then there's this office with a window, and this guy that has stripes from here to here and medals like that. And all 7 people looked at me immediately when I walked in, and everybody looked down, and okay, great, I guess I'll find. But then the guy with all the stripes looks up at me, and he walks around his desk, shakes my hand, drags me into an office, and 2 days I'm in Paris Island.
Bang, bang.
Bang, bang. So I was enlisted in the Marines, and I started off as a grunt, and I didn't really like that very much. So I thought maybe I'll cross-train, and I'd made really good friends with the admin clerk, you know, in the company. And it's always good to know people like that. And he found me a transfer opportunity, and I went to Iwakuni and to OGT study to be a computer programmer.
And we were there at the same time.
Same time, yeah. Of course, you were a lieutenant or a captain, and I started off as a PFC. So.
Was flying anywhere in your horizon?
Horizon, oh yeah, that's what I wanted to do.
Okay.
I wanted to get out and fly. And as a matter of fact, it's real interesting. Small world. I went through ground school, and then I don't think they had an aero club, but they had a guy teaching ground school there, and he flew the 117. Big shaky thing, that DC-3 with the Super 3 with the big engines on it, the Wrights on it. So I took ground school from him, and then later on, his son was a pilot in my flight in England.
Small world.
It's a pretty small world. So I wanted to get out, and initially, the whole time when I was in the Marine Corps, my intention was to get out, finish my degree, and I worked on a little bit in college, and then fly for the Marines. And I did that. I got out to finish my degree, and before I finished, I did the PLC program. And I had a pilot slot, and then after I finished the PLC program, they took it away. And it wasn't just me, it was a whole slew of people in the early 80s they didn't need, so I found out later it's probably 90% of like 2 or 3 year groups. So I said, fine. They said, we want you to be a grunt, you can't be a pilot now. And I said, well, I've done that, and I don't want to do that again. It's an honorable profession, and I respect it, but what I wanted to do was fly. So I went to
had you ever been to a small airport or in a small airplane?
I had, yeah.
As a kid?
As a kid, I grew up with airplanes, actually. My dad had...
Oh, okay.
This was my dad's, and then I rebuilt it.
Oh, wow.
The Stearman. And, I grew up with airplanes. When I was a kid, he had a friend of his who owned an Aviation Rangemaster, a G model, which didn't have the sliding canopy, had a door. And he could fly it as much as he wanted to. He just had to take his brother to the football games every Saturday. He was a referee, college football referee. So every Saturday we'd be flying all over Texas, to the football game.
Wow.
And then later on he flew Musketeers and a Skywagon.
Did you have your license when you went in the Marine Corps?
Not when I went in the Marines. I finished my license when I was in. When I was in the Marine Corps.
But you had flown. Had you soloed or anything?
I had not.
Before? Okay.
I had not. And by the time, though, I went through the PLC program, I had my private. And so I went to the Navy and the Air Force, and they both said they'd take me. And then I figured, well, the Navy, I'm going to be gone on ships a lot. And I just got married and I had a kid. So I thought, that won't work. So I went to the Air Force.
I grew up 5 miles from an airport. I didn't know that until I was about 25 when I came home from the Marines. And I had that turned on in my awareness now. And I said, good grief, there's an airport. And it was tube and fabric aircraft, bird dogs and such.
Yeah.
A little bit more on this. Now, you said that your dad owned this.
Yeah.
And then, how old were you when he got it?
Well, he
already had it when you were born?
No. He and a couple of friends bought. This is his second Stearman. Was this one? They bought a Stearman, and I guess when I must have been a freshman in high school, maybe in junior high, and it kept it at Cardi's, which is a little grass strip on the outside downwind at Randolph, San Antonio. Mm. And everybody thinks of a grass strip, and that's aviation kind of thing. This was Cardi's. It was this guy named Mac Cardi. He retired from the Air Force as a lieutenant colonel mechanic. He was a maintenance guy, and he opened up a grass strip and he did maintenance, and he had T hangers, and he had a maintenance hangar, and he lived right next door, and he had the gas pumps and rockers. So when you're sitting there on Saturday, you could watch the flying and stuff.
Was that south of Stinson?
No, that was
west.
It was Randolph, which is on the northeast side of town.
Oh, okay.
And it was just on the outside downwind of the east runway. Cibolo, Schertz area is where it is. And it's not there anymore. It's a RV park. Mm-hmm. Mac died, and eventually his wife, Juanita, couldn't keep it going. So, and then they built this. What killed it as an airport was they built a elementary school on the end of the runway. It's like, oh gosh.
There you go.
So anyway, that's how I grew up. I was the stuffer, and my dad. And when he passed away, I went through his logbooks, and I found out he'd given rides to over 1,300 people in the Stearman. And it was
this one? Wow.
Well, mostly in the other one, but also this one. And he.
Do you have a picture somewhere with you and him in this plane?
I'm not sure if it goes together, but I do have it. I can put it in as
cool.
On the B-roll.
Be a good Photoshop thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how I grew up.
So you in the Air Force, you went right into flight school.
Right. Yeah.
And then how long? What was happening in the world at that time when you started?
Not much,
when
actually.
You got out of flight school.
Yeah, not much. I finished. Let's see, when did I finish college? Early '80s, and our neighbor where we lived, my dad lived in Village Oak, which is on the west side of Randolph, right next to the freeway to 35. Mm-hmm. Our neighbor Bob Lehman, he was in the Air Force, and when he learned that, he gave me recommendations. He was a chief master sergeant, so he gave me a recommendation letter and stuff like that to go in the Air Force. And he also told me about NJET, Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training Program. And what they do is they have a specialized syllabus, and they train fighter pilots. Don't quite do that so much today, but it's changed a little bit. But back then, if you didn't make the grade to be a fighter pilot, then they washed you out. Unfortunately, it happened to some guys that were good pilots. They just couldn't quite do the fighter pilot thing. So I competed with, I think, 70 or 80 guys to do that in OTS. That was my commissioning source. So I went to NJEP and finished that, and I flew F4s for about 5 years. And then I had to do a tour, what they call an alpha tour. Out of your major weapon system, you go do something. Either you go to the training world or whatever. And they wanted me to go to a short tour to Korea. I don't want to do that. I'm married, have kids, and I've done a short tour.
That's a concept that never was. I never even thought that was an option in the Marines. Oh, you're gone.
Yeah, you're gone. Well, I was in the Marines and I did a short tour, but that counted. So when the Air Force tried to make me go short, I said, I've been a short tour, and the way the rules are in the Air Force is everybody else has to go short before they can make you go short again, if you've been once. So I didn't have to do that. But and I had a by name request to go to the LIFT Lead-In Fighter program with the AT-38s at Holloman, because I'd worked with the colonel, I guess he was the DO, and we were on an accident board together, and he put a by name request in for me. But when I torpedoed the short tour thing, they go, well, you're not doing that. Made me be an ALO, Air Liaison Officer in Germany.
Yeah, I did that for a while. The Tweety Bird, what is it?
The T-37.
T-37.
That was the first airplane in the Air Force. Since I already had my license, I didn't have to go to Hondo. At that time,
I grew up in Somerset.
Did you?
Somerset was an intersection.
Yeah.
Southwest of San Antonio. So we had all those guys.
Yeah.
And Hondo was, booming.
Yeah, if you didn't have your license, you'd have to go to Hondo, and you'd fly 172 through Solo. Mm-hmm. And I think they got like 13 hours. And then you go to the commissioning source.
And where was that?
It's in Lackland.
So a lot of
Medina
Texas
Annex.
flying. And Japan.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a few other places. Another big thing that I think of is the warbirds, and I would have images of a B-25 and a T-6 Texan.
Own two of them.
And any other military aircraft?
Yeah, I've flown a few. I flew the C-47 DC-3. I flew the 25 quite a bit and taught in it, and for a private deal. And then I also flew a couple of them in the CAF. I've flown the P-38 for the Fagans.
Oh, wow.
For them, and that was pretty fun.
For who?
Ron and Evan Fagan in Minnesota.
Is that an air show?
No,
type thing?
it's a private museum.
Oh, okay.
But they've got a heck of a collection, and it's a.
How do you prepare to fly a P-38? You just get in it and go?
No, well, not really. You got to be recommended, and the way it worked is since they were restoring what was going to be rough stuff at the time, and then it has since changed to Scat 3 for Robin Olds. It was named for Norbruff first because he was from Minnesota, and that's where they are. They're in Granite Falls, Minnesota. And so since I was going to do that, I went to Chino and flew with Steve Hinton and the B-25 and their B-25. And the amazing thing is the B-25 actually has very...
You guys are getting all these names right that he's dropping. Chino and Steve Hinton.
Steve Hinton. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Robin Olds. Y'all might make a list just if you ever have an interest in some of the things that were really hopping. Scott's just bouncing right by them, but go ahead.
So B-25 it's a twin-engine airplane. It's got some flight characteristics that are very, very similar to the P-38. And since the P-38 doesn't have a two-seat airplane, you have to have something to serve as the preparatory airplane for that. So we flew with him, and actually I went through the P-38 school in the checkout program with Rod Lewis, who owns Glacier Girl. We went through it the same
Glacier
time.
Glacier Girl was flattened under 50 feet of ice.
I think it was like 200 feet.
200 feet of ice. They had a big hot pot, and it melted down through the ice. They got to the cavity, and they brought the airplane up and rebuilt it, and now it's flying. That's Glacier Girl.
Glacier Girl, yeah, it was tremendous.
Yeah.
Rod Lewis bought it from the folks, and I'm spacing on the names of the people who rebuilt it in Tennessee. I think it was Tennessee.
Did you ever pay any attention to the ME-262s that they built at Meacham?
Well, I found out about it right when they took them away from the guy there, which is a shame because I would have loved to seen them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I tried. I went in. I actually got a tour on it.
Did you?
They were building 6 of them.
Yeah.
And that's just a beautiful airplane. They were totally correct examples of the aircraft with engine pods that were modified to hold the smaller jet engines today and brakes. So they had brakes, and that's what I understand. You may know more about those.
Yeah, well, the folks down in Houston have one of those, and I think the other one flying is in Seattle, I think. But yeah, I would love to fly that. That's a tremendous airplane.
So you did the military, and then you've done the warbirds, and what other activities would you throw in there that you've done it aviation wise?
Well, I had an upset when I was flying for American Airlines in an airplane in Chicago, and that got me interested in upset prevention and recovery training. And
you had an upset?
Yeah, I was flying a Fokker 100, and they vectored me in real close behind a 747, and just before we hit the final approach fix, we were converging on that spot, and we were. I didn't have a radar to tell me. Back in the old days, I could lock somebody up. I know exactly how far I am from somebody I didn't know. I'm just eyeballing it, and it's real tough on a big airplane how close you are. So I'm thinking I'm pretty close to this 7.4, but the controller's not doing anything about it, so it must be legal, And I put the gear and the flaps down, and then just before we hit the final approach fix, so we've been wherever our path was. Now it's almost exact, and I ran in his wake, and it pitched me over to almost immediately. And I'm trying to stop it rolling, but it didn't. It rolled out to about 70 degrees of bank, and it dropped the nose about 15 to 20 degrees. And I recovered from that, and we just went and landed. But that got me really interested in UPRT. So not long after that.
So that would be a program that you would develop or help develop for training.
For training.
For other people that get into the wake turbulence type.
Right.
Is it wake turbulence specifically, or?
That's one of the scenarios that I teach. Yeah. If you remember, I had an extra, probably about the time you. That's why I bought the extra, was to do UPRT, and it turned out to be a real expensive airplane, and insurance ate my lunch, so I couldn't keep it. But eventually, that's why I bought the aerobatic Bonanza, is to do the same thing.
Wow. So where do you do that training?
Well, I do it here based out of the house in the Bonanza.
First come, first serve, or
kind of. Yeah, I'm not. It's not like I'm super busy doing it. I don't want to do that. I'm retired now, so I have a limited number of slots that I do. But I just started doing it in the S211, which is an Italian jet. It's a single-engine jet in Denton.
In Denton.
At Denton Enterprise. We do it out of there, and actually most of what we do there is done over Gainesville. So we're well away from the Class B and traffic and stuff like that.
Have you ever put a small plane in a field?
I have.
That you can talk about? Right?
Yeah. I've put the Stearman, actually, I've had 2 engine failures in the Stearman. And you weren't here at that point. But I'd taken it to Oshkosh to be judged, because I spent almost 10 years, 9.5 years restoring it. So I wanted to judge it. So I went to Oshkosh and did really well there. We won a bronze Lindy.
Wow.
which is pretty good for a low budget.
Okay, Bronze Lindy, half the points come from the designer?
No, what they do is
I was going to say that's pretty good if you can get the design.
it's the 100. They grade you on a 100 scale, and it's all about how original it is. They don't penalize you for breaks, which is a good thing.
So the judges are high-level peers.
Yes, yeah,
And they, it's not like 4 or 5 guys walking around judging. The Lindy Award,
it's a big deal.
is a big deal, and anybody that has done that invested quite a bit of time and energy. And the things that can disqualify your airplane are minuscule. It's got to be exactly because the competition is real high too.
The competition is enormous. The gold and the silver that year, they had to have spent, both of them, well north of $1 million, $2 million. I didn't spend that much. Of course, it took me 9.5 years, but I was really accurate. The fire extinguisher was even World War II accurate, and I was the only one with an operating manual starter, because that's what they had in World War II. Most people put stuff in there and they wire it shut. Well, I have one that works. So there was little details like that. They don't penalize you for brakes. I have disc brakes. Big believer in disc brakes, because when my dad had the airplane, I don't think we ever got more than one brake working at a time.
So you put that in a field?
I did, on the way home from Oshkosh. I had there's a thing in the lore about a continental cough. It'll be flying along, and all of a sudden it'll quit for a half second, and then it'll start running again. And people go, "Oh yeah, that's continentals." Okay, and then they'll say that, "Well, put in Marvel Mystery Oil in the fuel, and that'll fix it." I had done that, and it didn't fix it. What happens is it's an updraft carburetor, so the bowl is here, and it has this fuel feeder that, standpipe that's about like this into the bowl, and then the needle valve, which is bigger than my thumb, rides in there, and when you move the throttle, it opens up 4 ports like that, if you can see that, okay, and it opens those ports up. So what happens in the continental cough is that needle valve sticks open, and the fuel's in the top tank, so it's got about 5 feet of pressure head, of gravity feed, pressure. So that's probably 3 to 5 psi, which is most engines run on that anyway. So it doesn't have a fuel pump. But when you put all that fuel into the throat of the carburetor, it chokes it. And I got 2 puffs of black smoke, and then the engine quit, so I made a landing in a field. The second one happened on takeoff, and when I had that happen, okay, fine, I ran it up and everything worked great. So I must have been an anomaly,
So on that first one, was that a one-day thing? You got out, fixed it, and took off?
I did.
Okay.
And then the second time was on takeoff in Oklahoma, and the engine quit on, 100, 150 feet. And I hadn't done anything to the engine. It had checked out, and I'd done a full run-up and everything's working fine, except now on takeoff it quit, and I didn't have time to do anything. And I ended up, 2 things went through my mind. One was, oh shit, I forgot to tighten my shoulder harness. Because in this airplane, if you don't do that, your head's going to hit the dashboard, and it did. I got a little scarred. You can't see it real well, but it's there. And the other one was fly as far into the accident as possible. I remember Bob Hoover's advice, fly as far into the accident as possible. It's just those 2 things popped into my head, and in front of me was just trees. Behind me over here, I was past the fence already. So over there was a kind of a field, and that looked like a nice one, but I'm not going to make it. Right there was a clump of trees. And I go, well, I'm going to make it in the clump of trees better than over there. So I just turned and used all my energy And what was going through my mind is I wanted to have as slow a forward velocity as possible, but stay in control. In other words, I didn't want to stall the airplane, but I wanted to be right on the edge of the stall. Mm-hmm. And I did that. And then the airplane hit, and I didn't go in that clump of trees. It hit short of the clump of trees. And the gear absorbed all the energy. It ripped off the right gear at the shoulder, and it ended up between the trailing edge and the leading edge of the horizontal. And the left gear just folded up like it was retracting into the wing. So both bottom wings, I ended up, I think 2 or 3 ribs had to be fixed. And then it tried to go up on its nose, but the prop had stopped vertically. So, and it was a metal prop, so...
Is that it over there?
That's it over there, yeah.
It's sitting over there on the wall.
With the red dirt from Oklahoma still on it.
Yeah, it needs a little tweaking, I think, a little bit.
It's my souvenir.
Too much camber, yeah.
Yeah. So, after that, I figured out what really the Continental cough is about. If it's about a carburetor that needs to be overhauled. That's what it is. So if it ever happens to you in a Stearman in a Continental, don't go, oh yeah, put Marble Mystery on it. Overhaul the carb. Don't lose the airplane.
Okay, so just a quick question. If you could own any aircraft, what would be your?
Well,
you already done it.
Well, would it be? How would you classify that? Could I keep it?
That you could sustain it.
That you could sustain.
That you could. Yeah,
well,
and stay married and all that.
Stay married.
No, let's just make it.
I could afford it.
Yeah, you could afford it.
Well, I'd love to have a Mustang. I'd love to have a Stagger Wing Beach for about a year or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So P-51.
Yeah, P-51 would be really cool.
Have you flown one of those? Mm-hmm. Wow. How do you get ready for that? Same thing?
The T6 is the airplane for that, although they say that the Mustang is a good trainer for the T6.
And perfect day. If you were just doing one thing with your retirement, what would you be doing?
Flying. I can't imagine doing one thing. I've usually got 5 or 6 different things going at one time.
It probably sounds like pretty much what you're doing.
Yeah, that's because I am retired. I do what interests me.
You're pretty much doing everything that you want to do. Just to wrap up, and this is the last word. I'm not going to let you say anything. Here, let me have your... No. One day, I took off at Spinks here, and Scott had taken off ahead of me in the Stearman. So he went on south, and I pulled up next to him, and maybe 30 yards. And we looked at each other, and he did a barrel roll. Came in behind me and said, "Guns, guns, guns. You're toast."
I did that. I'm not sure about that. I don't know.
And I said, "Speed, speed, speed." I was in a very easy. And I said, "Speed, speed, speed." And I outrun his bullet. So the next day, we were at a party, and Scott came up and said, "Boy, I had you dead to rights there yesterday. You were toast." And I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Guns, guns, guns." And I said, "Well, I said speed, speed, speeds. And my speed's real."
Your speed's real, but a bullet goes at 3,300 feet per minute. Or second, actually, sorry. 3,300 feet per second. Even a very isn't that fast.
Obviously, this is an ongoing debate, but great fun. Great fun around here. And Scott has done a lot to, back with the videos, introducing the community to a lot of people and encouraging, I think, a lot of people. Even if they didn't come here, I think Scott is always an encourager and helping like the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and the Young Eagles. And I think that Scott has influenced a lot of people in a very good way that nobody knows about. And maybe we'll do this again. when Scott has time to think about it, and maybe follow on to some of the things that you've talked about. And Scott has done a lot of things in the community, just as a neighbor that has significantly affected the neighborhood, and we're pretty well full up now, pretty much, but there's still work to be done here, and I think we pretty much just scratched the surface with what Scott has done and is doing even right now. I bet there's 10 things that I could ask more if I knew what to ask. But thank you for this time, and maybe we'll do it again.
All right. Well, thanks for pinning me and wanting to interview me. I appreciate that. So,
all right.
Well, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time on FlyWire.